parents, students, potentially families. Tonight is our virtual Q&A for events related to happenings at Algonquin Middle School. If you haven't had a chance to see my face yet, I'm Brian Rode. I am the assistant principal. I took over in May as assistant principal Gela headed over to Post and Kill. I'm going to be moderating tonight, sending questions to our participants to answer for all of you. So I'd like to thank you for joining us, and I'm going to turn things right over to Principal Messia. All right. Thank you for joining us, Principal Messia. If you'd like to go ahead, and I know you have a few remarks just to open the meeting with, and then we'll get to questions.
Sounds good. So welcome everyone, and thank you for joining us here for our presentation to learn more about the hybrid model in the upcoming school year for Algonquin students. I'm broadcasting to you live from room 603. We'll talk about that in just a few minutes. But also just to talk a little bit about the format for tonight, we're going to take your questions in just a few minutes, and we'll go through them, as many as we can during the course of this hour. I'll take over the first 30 minutes or so, and then we'll have about 15 minutes for Dr. Camille Harrelson, our Director of Special Education, who will share with us some more information about special education needs and programming for students, and answer questions along those lines too. And then for the final 15 minutes, Mark Bubniak, our Athletic Director, is with us as well, and he's going to be able to speak a little bit about the athletic program and where things are at on that front too. Also a programming note, the district is going to be holding an additional forum coming up tomorrow at 1 p.m. That'll be another chance for you to have your questions answered. Any questions that you have on a district level, and several of the questions that we've heard already from the elementary presentations relate somewhat to district level topics. Those are going to be best appropriately addressed through that forum and those question lines tomorrow at 1 p.m. We also want to let you know that last night, Dr. Franchini spent an hour and 15 minutes answering questions, and those questions have been answered on a video form that is available for you to download and to view on the district webpage. And also, hot off the presses, the school has been developing a frequently asked questions section put on the website as well for coronavirus and school opening questions and answers. So we encourage you to check out those resources for additional information that may answer some of your common questions, particularly as they relate to the entire school district. Let's take a minute and talk a little bit about our reopening process and some of our guiding principles that we've lived with throughout this entire past several months. We know and recognize the importance of safety for our students and our staff, and we take nothing more seriously than that as we look to return to physical in-person schooling. We know that there are many things that we need to do as a school to help be ready and to help our students be ready to start school when we begin in September. Some of those things are really about basic education and about trying to remind students about the importance of social distancing, hand washing, and masks. And we'll be working with our social media person, Brian Radowitz, as well as our school district staff and the several reopening committees to help prepare materials and begin the education process for our students to better understand the new expectations and ways that we're going to go about doing our business here in school. School will certainly look different this coming school year. Everyone seems to recognize that and understand that. We want kids to really understand the why behind it so that we can all be involved and be a part of this solution for the coming school year. We also want to just take a second to remind you about the hybrid model, and that's going to have students attending physically in person here on one day, and then on the other day they'll be at home, and that'll be a rotation that'll go through the school calendar. So we'll have students here on one day, and then the next day they'll be at home working on independent learning activities, perhaps viewing class materials that are broadcast live out of a classroom, such as this one, or also completing independent activities like we described too. I also want to take just a second before we get going and before I lose the opportunity to say thank you to Ms. Connie, our school custodian, and Adam Shoemaker. They have worked incredibly hard to physically prepare our school for the reopening that we will have in just a few weeks. They have worked tirelessly. They've painted every surface at the first few weeks of the school closure. And then they've gone through and they've removed all the extra furniture and set up our socially distanced classrooms like the one you see behind me. If it looks like I'm sweating tonight, it is because I am sweating. It's very, very, very warm inside of this classroom tonight, and the sun is aimed directly at me. So don't think that it's the heat of the questions that's getting to me. It's really just the heat of the room. But let me show off the classroom for just a second. And this is Miss Conroy's classroom in the 6th grade wing. And hopefully, this is not a professional camera operation that we're running here, broadcasting right from my laptop, but you can kind of see the layout of the classroom. We've spread out the desks in the 6-foot distancing, so there's plenty of space there. This classroom is right now prepared to hold approximately 12 students. Ms. Conroy has a station up in the front. Let's see if we can make sure we aim in on that too. And you can see the whiteboard, the chalkboard, as well as the smartboard in this classroom. One of the benefits of the hybrid model for us here at Algonquin and also at the high school is that with this programming, we're able to use our existing current classroom spaces so that teachers are in their rooms that they typically would be in, and students are assigned to the homerooms that they typically would be assigned to as well. So that's a real benefit to us here in the building. It also provides us a lot of space to be able to socially distance, but then also the smaller groups to be able to provide some in-person instruction that's collaborative in nature, even if it's at a distance, be able to have a chance to have small group work and class discussions that are rich, and for teachers to be able to give your child a lot more one-on-one attention. So we're excited about those components of the program. We certainly, in an ideal world, would much rather have everybody come back to school and everything be like it was in 2019. We recognize that can't happen right now. So we try to look at the benefits of this program and really try to make this a very, very positive school year for the kids with the year ahead. All right. So one last note. I may not have every answer to every question you have tonight. And that's not me being evasive. That's not me trying to dodge the bullet. It's not me trying to really ponder these questions in a big abstract kind of way. It's just that we are right now responding to things that are coming at us and different rules and regulations that quite honestly change by the day or by the week, by the hour probably is more accurate. So we really want to be sensitive towards that. We want to give you the best information that we can and the most accurate information based on where things are at today. So that's what we're going to do tonight. So let's see what kind of questions are out there and let's see what we can do to help answer them. Dr. Rohde is here and he is not only our moderator, but he's our assistant principal, of course, and we're glad to have him. He's joining us since May, and we've been benefiting from his expertise and his knowledge. We're glad to have him here. So he may not only ask a question, but hopefully he can help answer some too. And I'm over here sweating. So he's back in the office. I think the AC's cranked up to -30 over there, right? It's like an ice box.
It is. How about this? Boy, can you believe it? Head principal is sweating it out and he lets the assistant have the AC. What a guy. What a guy. Well, let's get into some questions here. So Principal Messia, can I select which letter day my child attends?
Okay, so with this question, the parent, the student perhaps, is asking if their last name starts with an A, for example, can they join the group that has class on the day when the students with the last name Z would have class? And while we want to help families and students as they adjust to this new model and recognize that they may not always be with their friends, we cannot right now at this time honor the numerous requests that have come in from different folks in regards to switching their letter day or being in combination with someone that they know as a friend or that lives in the same neighborhood. We are really working hard to balance our class size to make our groups as small as possible so that if we had a typical class of 24, we wanted to make that class 12. And we know that that's challenging under just the alphabetical conditions of trying to divide the alphabet just in half by doing A through K and then L through Z. It becomes much more complicated. We try to balance in friend requests as well. So unfortunately, we're not able to honor the friend requests at this time. That is just something that we are doing as a school here, as well as at the high school as well. So it's a district-wide decision at this point.
So would there be extracurricular activities in this hybrid model?
That's a great question. And we've been working hard to think about that one. So one thing we're going to do to help organize our clubs and activities is create a club hub. And we're going to share that out as basically a Google Doc that is viewable for anyone that wants to take a look at it. And kids can check on, see what kind of activities are coming up. One of the things that's been decided as a school district is that for the start of the school year, we're going to have our extracurricular opportunities take place in a virtual format so that students can participate if they are here in the building for that day, or if they're at home for that day in the remote programming. So in the hybrid and the remote model, we're able to make sure that all of our students are able to participate in the extracurricular opportunities that are available. It also is balanced by the fact that our late bus service will be discontinued for the beginning of the school year. We hope that it returns at some point during the school year. That's a wonderful thing that hundreds of students take advantage of every single week. And we know that that's a valuable service to them. We want to keep our kids engaged in after school. But we also know that we need to return to school safely and to do that in a phased kind of a manner. And so we're going to focus first on instruction and getting kids in and doing what they need to do. But we want them engaged. We want them doing, we want them having fun. And that's really important here in the middle school. So that's our thoughts on that one. We're going to keep it virtual for the start, hopefully get things rocking and rolling, and then we can perhaps return to some in-person extracurricular activities as soon as possible.
So, Principal Messia, if a family chooses virtual only, so they choose not to come even though schools are open, will classes such as honors courses or accelerated classes be offered for those families?
This is another great question, and this is one we've labored on as we've tried to develop our programming for students that are going to stay home and participate in 100% online learning. It's a challenge, quite honestly. It's something that we struggle with and that we're working hard to resolve, but to be quite honest, it's something that we will likely not be able to honor at this point. Now, this is something that has changed regularly, but at this point today, and this is maybe different than an answer I may have given earlier in the week, for example. At this point, it looks like the honors courses, both here and at the high school, will not be able to occur in the 100% online format. Rather, we're going to focus on providing a sound basic education through that programming so that our students don't have any gaps in their skills, and we'll provide grade level appropriate learning experiences for students at their grade level here in the building.
So there's some questions popping up about kind of the virtual model, the AV schedule. One is asking, would siblings in the same grade have the same class schedule to limit the number of students outside of the home they're in contact with?
You know, that's a parent actually reached out about that one. They have twins, and in the past, we've put twins and siblings on the same team, and we've kind of let the schedule run, and that way they have the same teachers and generally the same homework assignments and activities. In this case, it seems like it makes sense. So if that parent in particular would like to reach out to us, we can doubly make sure that that is the case for their kid, that they have a paired up schedule so they're in the same room as their twin and or sibling in the same grade level. Great question.
And sticking on the hybrid schedule for a second here, there's some confusion still lingering about, are kids coming in every other day? Is it only 3 days a week? Is it more of a 2-week rotation to complete it all? What can you add to that?
That's a great question, and it depends in the school district, right? So if you watch the news or read the newspaper or see what's online, what other schools are doing, everybody's doing something a little bit different, it seems. Here in Naval Park, we've decided that we're going to do an AA-BB rotation. Now that sounds confusing. Let's kind of walk through. That means that Dr. Rode has the last name of R, and he's in the second group. So today was not his in-person day. Today was the first day of school, and he was at home today. We have a special set of learning activities that we have for him on this very first day of school. So don't you worry if you're in the second half of the alphabet. We've got a plan for your first day of school when you're at home. So he was there at home. He completed his learning activities, did a great job. I think he's going to get an A+ on that thing. So wonderful. Coming in tomorrow, Dr. Rode will have class in person here at Algonquin. The following day, he's going to be at home again. And then the day after that, he'll be in school. We're going to do that every day of the week. Now, some schools aren't doing that. Some schools are only running 4 days a week. Some schools are doing a 3-day. They're doing all different kinds of things. We're doing every other day. So if you're a student listening to this, if you're here today, you're at home tomorrow, and then you're back with us the following day. So it's every other day rotation right through the school calendar. And one of the things Dr. Rode was actually working on today, when he was here in the office, was he was making the calendar for us. He was working hard on that so that everybody will be able to see what the color day will be, what day you'll need to be here present in school, and we're going to get that out as soon as we can.
So could you speak a little bit with the, how will arrival and dismissal, maybe the typical procedures of arriving and leaving school as compared with last year, how would that look this year with this hybrid model?
It'll certainly look different. So let's talk about the arrival process. Students can arrive here at Algonquin beginning at 7 a.m. And that's the case since last year too. We've had that for a number of years. Parents can drop off their students on their way to work anytime after 7 o'clock. We ask that you wait until 7 to drop off your student though, if you must. So students can arrive beginning around 7 o'clock, and we'll have a process for their orderly entry into the building. A little bit about that process. Outside of the building, we've marked off some X's, and we're going to continue that process to kind of roll this out further. But there's going to be a number of X's to be able to mark out the locations where students will be able to stand as they wait to enter the building and then actually physically enter beginning at 7 o'clock. We don't want anybody left outside waiting at 7, so please wait with your child and then allow them to enter. But we'll use the 3 separate entrances that we have in the front. Our building is beautifully designed with 3 separate wings and 3 separate entrances too. And we'll use all 3 this year. So the main entrance will be for 6th grade. The gold gym, the middle entrance for the gym, will be for 7th grade. And then 8th grade will use the far entrance at the new gym. Now, as students come into the building, we're going to try to encourage them to come in as quickly as we can through this process, so we're not holding up and having everyone wait in line all day. Part of that process will be a scanning process. So the district has invested in temporal scanners, as I believe the correct terminology for it, but it looks like an iPad. And we'll share out some videos on social media of what this actually looks like for students to better understand. And I used one today for the first time. It was pretty cool. You go up to this scanner and it'll ask you to step forward, step up a little bit closer, maybe step back a little bit, and it'll measure your temperature based on your eyes as well as your forehead. I came in at 96.4. That's nice and cool. I think I'm at about 105 right now, just sweating it out in here, but that's beside the matter. That's not a fever, that's just sweating. So anyway, students will come in, they'll stop at the temporal scanner, they'll get the thumbs up from the staff member that'll be monitoring that station, and then they'll be escorted, they'll be moved into the next location for them to wait. And for 6th grade, that'll be the auditorium that's right next to that entrance. For the 7th graders, it'll be the gold gym, and we'll have the floor marked off with social distancing markers, and then the blue gym for the 8th grade as well. Students will wait there until we have begun our morning meeting period at 7:45. We'll have a very staggered, slow process for students to be dismissed by rows. We'll handle that, and we'll have students travel down the hallway at their socially distanced pace, and then they will enter their classroom. One of the changes that we haven't mentioned just yet, but maybe it'll come up in the questions, is lockers. And we are not going to be utilizing lockers this year. That's one of the suggestions that's been out there from a number of schools across the country and our New York State regulation as well. We're going to have students carry backpacks, and they're going to be able to keep them with them during the school day. So they'll directly enter into their morning meeting location. They'll have a seat at their assigned morning meeting location seat, and then we'll begin our morning procedures like we typically would in a regular school year, with morning meeting occurring, with our social programming that we have, our social emotional learning programming for students, our One School, One Book, which we're excited to reveal the title of coming up a little bit later on, not tonight, you gotta wait, but we'll get you that title real soon. It's a pretty good one. It's one you may have heard about too, that's a little hint. And we'll have our morning announcements, of course, on the TV. So our programming will look very similar at that moment, and then we'll have classes move from morning meeting.
So just a point of, it seems like there's still a little bit of lingering confusion about the schedule process, but I think to also assure all of you watching and listening that Principal Messier and myself, as well as the high school set of administrators, are working to align the, basically we're working together. 612 is the same plan. So the AB versus, you heard Principal Messier mention AA versus BB. That's a plan that we're developing in case we go remote again. But that 612 is going to be on the same rotation of days. Basically, you'll be coming in every other day here to the school. So with let's switch maybe to some questions on virtual days. There's a couple piling up here. So could you just maybe briefly speak about what a typical virtual day would look like? And I'm not saying, well, let's back up one more, Principal Messier. What about the day that I'm not at school? So I'm at school one day, the next day I'm at home. What can I be expected to do on that day? This is still within the hybrid model.
Right. And this is something we're still developing too, right? This is something that we're working actively with our teachers on this topic and planning with our district administration as well as the high school too. One of the things that we do know is that New York State is going to require daily attendance for students. So we're going to ask them to participate in some way in the very early morning period, to watch the morning announcements that we have on our morning program here in school through our YouTube channel. Then also to participate in probably a Google form of some sort, some way that for us to be able to know that the student is there, that they are ready to participate in their learning for the day, and that'll be their attendance. And then in terms of beyond that, we're going to also require period attendance as well. And that may look different in different environments. Some teachers may be broadcasting live from their classroom, and students may be asked to stay and participate in the full 40 minutes of a lecture activity that's going on in the room. That may be one thing that happens. Another thing that might happen is that teachers will provide them with, on the day that they're here in person, a set of materials, a set of lists of videos and activities and things to do to complete in their Google Classroom. And they'll have a deliverable, something that they need to finish up and do for their teacher as an independent learning activity. They also may do things on Google Classroom or complete Google Forms and Google assignments so that they're actively doing. But the idea is that students are participating in their learning from 7:45 a.m. until 2:25 p.m. That does not necessarily mean that they're sitting in front of the screen, staring at it the entire time, because we know that that would be fatiguing for anyone's eyes. And we don't want students to have that much screen time. But we also know that there's certain times where we need them to tune in. So we want to make sure that that's an option and available for them using our one-to-one Chromebooks. But we also know that there's going to be times where they need to do some independent learning too. And that is our plan at this point.
So Principal Messier, one last question about being physically at the school. A couple of questions came up about will we be using fans to help cool things down? I'm sure you can relate to that this evening in the classrooms. And as far as wearing masks, anything you can say about that? What are we going to do to kind of keep things cool?
Yeah. Well, our ventilation system is going to be running at full steam. It's not on right now because classes are not in session, but we're going to be running that more in the morning. That draws in a lot of fresh, cool air, particularly on these warmer days. So we'll have that running before students enter as well as after students enter, and ventilating much more frequently and much stronger power than we have in the past. We haven't run the system on full power, but we can do that, and we're going to be planning on doing that as well. In terms of classroom fans, I haven't read any regulation that explicitly states that classroom fans are not allowed. I would imagine if they help circulate fresh air into the building. We have a great exhaust system in this classroom behind me that was installed in 2015. So I would imagine that that would be acceptable. But if we can clarify that, and certainly don't want to give you a false answer on that. So we'll look into that one a little bit further too.
Now, will students be told how to wear their masks correctly over their mouth and their nose?
Well, this is like a promo for Dr. Rhodes' video that we just produced, and it is a winner. You're going to want to check this video out. It's going to be released pretty soon. It's a funny video, but it's a serious message. And the idea behind it is there are right and wrong ways to wear your mask, of course. And we need to educate students with that information. We need them to know how to properly wear a mask, how to properly hand sanitize, all these kinds of things.
So it seems that, oh, sorry.
No, please, go ahead. Yeah.
So as I'm kind of checking our time here and maybe we should switch over to some questions about the virtual options. When we say the virtual option, we mean even though we are physically open for business and have established regulations to create a safe physical environment, parents are choosing to keep their students out of school. So we'll be talking, Principal Messier will be answering a couple questions about that. So first of all, there's several that want to know, is this a full year decision? Or can they choose this for the beginning of the year and come back at some point during the year?
Sure. Yeah, it's not a full year decision at this point. What the school district has decided that they'd like to use 10-week increments. So our marking periods will be the demarcation for the beginning and end of new entrant process back into the school building. And that's really something that we want to try to hold our community to, because the idea behind that is we want to have a consistency of programming for our students. We feel that it's best for our learners to have that consistent relationship with their teachers, be able to consistently complete their learning activities and achieve the benchmarks that we need them to, so that when they return to their classes here in the building, they're not on a different page than everyone else is. And that's really, really mission critical. We know this is an important school year. We know that we want to get our kids ready for whatever's ahead of them the following school year too, and to be ready for as lifelong learners. To do that, we need to make sure they don't have gaps in their learning. And that's a big thing that we're working on this coming school year.
Now, will students who participate virtually, will they be participating in things like BOC, so band, orchestra, chorus, art, music, technology classes, things like that?
It's a great question, and it's one we're working on. Quite honestly, some things lend themselves more easily to virtual learning than others, right? Band, orchestra, and chorus are rather challenging to implement through a virtual learning model where classes are going on here in person. However, we're committed to providing a sound basic education for our students in that online format. And that would be the core content areas, and then as many specials as we can find ways to connect them with. And that's something we'll work hard to develop. And again, that's something we're working on right now. It's certainly, we've been putting in the hours trying to develop that programming and to make it successful and to make it look good and work well for our students. But we also know that it's something new for us too. And that we can't build it as an entirely new school system too. And we are committed to running the hybrid model. We also want to honor and understand that everybody's in a unique situation and that they may need something different for their child. And so we're going to work hard to make sure that we can help you with that.
So if you had mentioned earlier that within the virtual model, the honors classes or accelerated track is not available. What if a student chooses to come back after a time of being virtual? Will they be able to have a chance to re-enter or enter for the first time rather those honors programs or accelerated programs?
You know, sometimes you get asked really good questions on the spot, and this is one of those times. It's a great question. And I don't want to give you a wrong answer on this one. I really want to stop and think about it because it's an important one. We don't want to limit kids' opportunities. We want kids to be able to do the things that we want them to be able to do. So that's a guiding principle that we have in our school district. It underlies everything that we work towards each day. So when we think about that, we really want to be sensitive towards that. I also don't want to put a student at a disadvantage by going into a class that they didn't participate in the first 10, perhaps 20 or 30 weeks worth of content knowledge and be able to then successfully transition into. So it's a real question. It's a great one. And I just don't want to give you the wrong answer. So if I can hold that one, Dr. Wood, if you don't mind making a note for me, that would be a great one to come back to.
And also, I want to take this opportunity to remind our listeners in the audience here that some of these questions are more applicable to information that was presented by Dr. Franchini at the district level. So some of you may be asking about certain procedures regarding how we're going to screen students, things like that. I want to encourage you to check out Dr. Franchini's question and answer session or to participate in the next one that he has. We're going to really try to stick to, with our limited time, things that are most applicable to Algonquin Middle School. And a lot of questions seem to be about programming, such as this next one. Principal Messier, who would be teaching the students that are learning virtually?
So students that are learning 100% virtually, the question is, who would be their teacher? Well, I can tell you this much. It would be an Averill Park teacher. It would be an Algonquin teacher for us here at the middle school. We have not officially finished our planning for this process, and we haven't been in touch with the teachers that may be able to provide that instruction, but it's our belief and our value that the Averill Park teachers provide a unique, high quality service to our students and our community. We'll be utilizing their skill sets to be able to deliver that instruction at this time.
How about, would they be starting their day, and perhaps you can say as much as possible or briefly about, when are students starting their day in the virtual model, the at-home model? Well, so the hybrid model, kids are at home, some kids are at school, and the virtual students. How are they all starting their day as far as timing and checking in? You did answer some of this already.
No, that's a great question. We'll start everybody at 7:45. It would be running with our staff, as we mentioned. So we'd be running it on a typical school calendar, typical school schedule as well. And so we'd want to keep that to 7:45 to 2:25. I know that when we went to the emergency remote learning back in the spring, it was really popular that we could start a little bit later than we would here in person. That just isn't the case when we are returning to our regular bus system and bell schedule and the needs at the high school and the elementary, of course, too, and be able to provide lunches and all the rest. So we'll run that typical bell schedule. One thing to note, if we do, for some unfortunate reason, need to return to remote learning for every student in Averill Park, if that's by governor's order or by the regional numbers not looking great for the coronavirus, we would transition to a later start time for everybody. So that would be a benefit to our students. Staff would do their professional work in the morning, and then students would have their classes start a little bit later on. We're not there. We quite honestly hope not to use that emergency plan, but it is available to us. And that's when we would do a little bit later start time, because we know that our middle school and high school kids prefer to sleep in a little bit later.
So how about the cafeteria? Will there be assigned seating in the cafeteria when students are on campus having lunch?
Great question. We are not going to be assigning students cafeteria seats at this time. However, our cafeteria is beautifully designed for social distancing. It actually has the floor tiling 6 foot squaring out. So it's very easy to demarcate where a student should be and where they shouldn't be, and where their desk location will be for lunch. We've turned the desk so they can have conversation and use our cafeteria. We also plan on using the outdoor area too, and the recess area has always been popular for lunch. I think this year it'll be even more popular as we kind of encourage kids to eat outside at our picnic tables, as well as our individual Adirondack chairs and other benches that are outdoors. And they can also bring a small blanket to sit on in the grass as well. It's really a nice thing to be able to do during this good weather.
So we're going to begin pivoting here. Principal Messier has taken all of the questions thus far, but there are some that are asked that are appropriate for our other panelists who are here, such as Dr. Harrelson or Mr. Bubniak. So I think at this moment, I'm going to start this question with Principal Messier. Can you begin to answer one more? And then we're going to pivot it to Dr. Harrelson after that. So it's really about, the access times, and then also receiving additional instructional support in the virtual model or when students are at home. So I guess it's a bit of a two-parter. How would access work virtually, and how would students receive that additional education, instructional support?
It's another great question, and one that we're kind of working on too. We've been able to create our access groups and have them in place for in-person. And then next we worked, kind of talking about the timeline of how we got to this. We created those groups. Then we also wanted to identify a way to offer our band, orchestra, and chorus programming, which we talked about in the last video series as well. But then we also know that there are students that are at home and they may have a question of their teacher. So it's an active thing that we're talking about and trying to identify a way to manage that, because we know that everything doesn't neatly fit into the time frame of class, and kids have questions about things that come up. So it's something we should definitely take a look at and consider as we start finalizing our plans and rounding out the edges of what our program will look like in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Principal Messier. And I just want to remind our listeners too that, and viewers, that please, if there's questions that continue to come in, if we don't get to your questions in the hour, they could be answered with the district presentations already, or please feel free to reach out to Principal Messier or myself. So I'm going to throw the same question to you, Dr. Harrelson. This is Dr. Camille Harrison, our Director of Special Education Department here in Averill Park. And so how about students who are virtual? So again, we are open for business, but they have chosen to remain home. How would their AIS or instructional supports be delivered?
Sure. So, if a parent chooses not to have their child come during the model that we're currently offering at Algonquin, we would work with them as the CSE department or the AIS service to really kind of outline how we can meet their child's individual needs. If the child has a 504 or has an IEP, then we would really want to look at the services and programs that are on their current plan and make sure that we can ensure that we can meet the student's needs. And if not, based on the level of supports that we can offer, have a discussion with the family to make sure they're comfortable with those supports. And then when we look at academic intervention services, it's again looking at the baseline data of collection to make sure that we're meeting skill deficits for our students and really engaging them in some explicit instructional practices to support them so that they can be successful. And then monitoring all of that, not whether they're an IEP or an AIS student, and reporting back to parents in a timely manner so they're kept aware of their child's progress as the school year goes on.
So it sounds like it'll be kind of an active process between families and your office to kind of adapt as needed to these programs.
And every child with an IEP has a case manager, so you can always reach out to the case manager if they have immediate questions. And if they don't have luck connecting with them, they're more than welcome to reach out to me in my office, and I'll be happy to get back to them as soon as possible.
So when we're in the hybrid model, Dr. Harrelson, will students continue to receive IEP services when they are at home? Could you maybe speak about that? So one day they're in school, one day they're possibly at home. How would that work?
Yep, so our intent is to ensure that we offer all the services that are on a student's current IEP plan, However, based on the hybrid model, that might mean something a little bit different for the times they are home. For our students that have a consultant teacher service on their IEP, that's actually a service that's pushed into the general education classroom. And if they're at home doing an assignment, we'll provide them with enrichment and support, but it wouldn't be that in general classroom type support that they're used to being, in person. But we'll make sure that we communicate that clearly with families and answer any questions they may have, because we want to make sure that they know that we really want to help their students be successful.
For parents who are sitting on the broadcast here, and this is just kind of throwing this out to you, is there anything that you could recommend, or even things they might want to think about, or just what do you think parents of students with IEPs or 504s or receiving AIS, things they might want to consider as they make their decisions?
So, it's a tough decision. I'm a parent myself, and it's one that you have to make with knowing your child and what their what their comfort level is and what your comfort level is. As a school district, we put in many procedures and protocols and safety measures for our students to make sure that we're enabling their safety. But again, that's that parental decision piece. And if a parent chooses not to send their child to school, please know we will work with you to make sure they're supported based on their IEP or their 504 plan. And to always ask questions and reach out, because parents are their child's best advocate. And I would much rather have a parent call me with 100 questions than not call because they don't want to bother somebody, or they feel it's, they're going to be too many questions being asked, and then they don't get the answers that they need. So I would much rather have families reach out if they have any questions at all.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Howelson. We're going to pivot at the moment to a sports question. Mr. Bubniak, a memo, as you know, because I got it forwarded from you, so I know came out regarding students and sports, and students if they are virtual. Could you add some clarity to that? Some people are still confused. So if they choose to keep their students out of the physical school setting, can they still participate in sports?
Sure. Thanks, Dr. Rode. Right now, can you hear me?
Can hear you. Yep.
Okay, good. Right now, we received a memo yesterday from the New York State Public High School Athletic Association and the New York State Education Department clarifying if students choose to be 100% virtual, they still will be allowed to participate in interscholastic athletics here at Averill Park. So those students, even though they're at home taking all their courses, they still will be able to participate here at Averill Park. And that news just came out yesterday. So I'm glad that question was asked, because at least I had an answer to that question. There's still a lot of questions as far as athletics that we don't have answers to.
Now, this one, Mr. Bubniak, at the moment, that's the only athletics related question. But I want to throw something similar to you that I asked Dr. Harrelson. Is there anything from the information you've received that parents considering entering students into sports or continuing sports, what they might want to consider, or maybe just speak about, where are we at this moment? I know, go ahead. Yeah.
So right now, we were originally supposed to start modified sports, which is 7th and 8th grade, on August 31st. All sports, modified, JV, and varsity have been pushed now till September 21st. So as of now, that is our targeted start date. My guess is between now and that date, some things will change. I don't have all the answers. We may be able to play certain sports and not others. Some of those traditional fall sports may be pushed to other parts of the school year if it would be safer to play during those times. But really, we don't have too many answers just yet on what's going to happen. But as of now, as of 6:37 on August 11th, we're looking to start on September 21st, and registration on Family ID for fall sports will run from August 24th to September 6th.
Great. Thank you so much, Mr. Bubniak. So if you don't mind staying on in case something else comes in.
Sure.
As you can hear, this is all a work in progress. The one thing we do know for sure is Mark Bubniak has the snazziest virtual background out of all the participants here. But Principal Messier, we'll throw some more questions back your way. So we have, of course, a whole cohort of students coming into 6th grade for the first time. Could you maybe speak to the parents who are bringing their 6th graders in for the first time and what we're going to do to transition them into the new school?
It's a great question. And you may notice I changed my setting. I went to the library where it's about 30 degrees cooler. So this is much more enjoyable to talk with you here. So our 6th graders, we are certainly well aware that this is a new experience for them and we want to ease that transition for them. We know that moving to middle school in an average year is challenging for a lot of kids. And this is going to be a challenge that we need to work towards, right? We need to work with them and help them as they transition to the school. We started that process back in the spring, and we produced a number of different video contents for kids to be able to view. We gave them a virtual tour of the building, a number of other things. I'd encourage you to check out that webpage that we created, and we should send out that link again too. That's another thing we should definitely follow up on after this. And it has a number of resources to help us kind of get geared up and ready to go for 6th grade. We also know that we want to try to do some more things now. We also have been spending our time building the program so that we could better understand what it looks like for kids. And now that we have a little bit better understanding of that and continue to refine that work as you hear tonight, now's the time to start working on that process too. So I can tell you our 6th grade team leaders are hard at work on developing a webpage that's going to serve as a transition hub. So all of the information that parents will want to know during those first few days of school will be available for kids to be able to see. And have access to throughout the school year too. So we're excited to have that as a resource for families too. So while the in-person programming that we'd love to have, our locker night that we typically do, the ice cream social that we've typically held, those certainly will not occur this year, but we do want to help in that process. And towards that end, we've also asked that our counselors help us with this too. And so they're going to have a couple of days where they'll be here in the building and we'll be able to help provide a little bit more of stress relief for some students that may need that extra TLC and support. Perhaps it's a visit to the building to be able to help them get acclimated to the place. Perhaps they've never been here. You know, there's a number of kids in the community that have been here for sports and other activities, their brothers and sisters, cousins and all that. But perhaps you've never been to the building and you'd like to see it. We'd ask that you reach out to us so that we can try to set up something for you too. Our counselors are also going to try to help students as they acclimate to this whole new school environment. And of course, the changing of classes and all the rest that goes along with middle school, which is a lot of fun. We're here for the fun too. We want them to understand that we can help them with that process. So I would encourage you to reach out to us, Dr. Rode, myself, and then our school counselors as well as we gear up, and we'll be doing that throughout the coming weeks.
So with students being back at the schools, what kind of planning is going on to make sure hallways aren't too congested, or let's start with that one.
It's a great question, and it's something we've spent some time on as well. A middle school typically is a jam-packed hallway, and that's just one of the things about middle school, right? Kids are at their lockers, they're hanging out, they're moving between classes, typically between the bells. Here we don't have a big truancy problem with kids getting from place to place, but we know that it's a different experience now. And so teachers are going to be dismissing by row. So that's really what we're going to do to slow down that traffic pattern, so that as a teacher will dismiss their students, they'll be standing at the hallway door to monitor the flow of traffic and say, we're going to wait here at our desks for just a moment, and we're going to have that hallway transition after that. We know the lockers are not being used, so that actually gains us quite a bit of space in the hallways. When we've traveled down the middle school, if you visited before, you know that it's a very busy place and that the first foot and a half or so on each side is taken up by students. We'll have students out of those spaces, not at their lockers. That's one of the main reasons why we're doing that. And it'll allow for a much easier flow of traffic as well. So we do have a plan for that, and we just need to have our staff be monitoring and supporting that. And we'll be out in the hallways, Dr. Rode and myself, at each transition, because you can't miss the transitions here at the middle school. We got music playing during each one of them. So you don't want to miss the music, and you got to be out there when that time happens.
Now, someone, this is a transition, just so many different bits of information coming out every day. What would you advise parents to do to just stay on top of the information coming out? The AP website, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, all of them, or just whatever works best for them?
Well, Brian Radowitz is our district's a professional media relations person, and he does an outstanding job of communicating on all the different platforms. So I know personally, I will watch Twitter and I'll also watch the school webpage. I'm not a Facebook guy, but my wife watches Facebook, so she'll catch that information. So everybody kind of has their own system, right? But the bottom line is we're going to get that information out to you. We don't want you to miss out on anything. The district has done a great job, and this is not a building level thing. This is a shout out to the district administration on this one, in sending out the email communications. They've done that very, very frequently, much more so than many of other neighboring schools. So we're fortunate for that. I think it'd be hard to miss some of the information, but I'm sure there has been times where people have felt inundated by information that's come out too. And certainly that's all of us in the same boat on that front.
Mhm.
There is a district webpage that is created just for this purpose, though, to house all of the critical information about our school reopening plan and about safe procedures around the coronavirus too. So check out that webpage. You can't miss it. It's at the very top of the webpage in bright letters. I believe it's red letters with a yellow background around it, right at the top of the webpage. You can't miss it. That's going to clue you in on anything new that the school district has put out in regards to our reopening plan.
So I do have a question here for you, Mr. Messier, and then Dr. Harrelson, I'm going to throw the same question to you. And it's just, for those students coming into sixth grade who were already had transition jitters, but now they have been compounded by just the current pandemic. And, what are we doing to kind of help these kids who might be coming in and just not feel confident about being in school, and that it's going to take some time for them to transition into a full day?
It's a great question and a thoughtful one. And we've worked hard on this topic. We've known that with school reopening, it would bring up a number of emotions, and that each one of those emotions is valid for each individual, including us adults, of course, right? Everybody has their emotions and their feelings on this topic. And we're going to work hard to work on that in classroom settings as well. So we've been really working on community circles and restorative justice types of frameworks as a school district and as a building in particular over the past couple of years. And now we get to double down on that and really work with our students and our staff on those topics throughout the year. This is not something that we're going to get done on the first day of school, right? We're going to have different feelings throughout the course of the school year, and we're going to need to be able to work with our counseling staff and our teachers to be able to help our students manage those situations and be able to address it so they can focus on what's really important to them and their learning.
Thank you. And Dr. Harrelson, kind of the same question, but more focused on the population of students who might have either IEPs, 504s, AS plans that might be experiencing, more than typical anxiety regarding coming back in.
Sure. So I think when you look at, like Mr. Messier had said, with students coming back in, it's new. We haven't been in school for quite a while, and we have several different committees that are working on ways to ensure that students have access to counselors, as needed. There's going to be multiple staff members available. So if a student is starting to feel that anxiety about coming back, or it's a new building and they're not familiar with it, they can always reach out to an adult that's in the building and we'll help them get through that situation. I also think the connection with the family is very important. And for, if a family has a child that they think might have struggles coming back to school, might be overly anxious, to again, reach back out to us. Every student has a case manager, and we can do that one-on-one personal contact of calling them or sending them an email and really helping them feel welcome. There's a great many of school counselors, and we have a social worker and school psychologist, and they're all here to help our students be successful. And, they're veteran. They've been here for a long time. So they've got a lot of tricks up their sleeves on how to help students be successful. And there's not going to be any situation that's going to come up that students should feel uncomfortable with or concerned with. These are things that counselors have seen before, and I think we're very well prepared to help our students when they return.
Thank you. And to add about the, as Dr. Harrelson spoke of and Principal Messier hinted at, that a lot of planning has been and continues to go into addressing these different needs. Subcommittees from our reopening task force that specifically deal with not only the social and emotional conditions of our students and to make sure they're making good progress and developing appropriately, but also for our staff members who are here and are compassionate and but also nervous about things. So we're looking to make the best, safest reopening that we can. Let's turn back for a few minutes here, Principal Messier, to the virtual model. So again, someone chooses to have their student, their child remain home for education. We are fleshing this out more, but what are the definites we can say for now? And maybe I can deliver a couple of questions about this that can help frame this. So for example, would the virtual days start at the same time as the students who are either home in the hybrid model or at school? And why don't we start there? Do the start and end times remain the same for virtual students?
Right, yes. We would start our school day at 7:45 a.m. and ask students that they tune in to the morning announcements that begin at about 8 o'clock. And before that, during that first few minutes of morning meeting time, complete a questionnaire, some kind of a Google form, for example, or check in so that we know that they're ready for their learning. So that's going to be step one for all virtual learning students, that they'll need to check in and be ready to go with their peers that are here in the building at the start of the day around 7:45 to 8 o'clock. Yeah.
Now, would they then follow the bell schedule?
Great question. And that is our intention at this time. So our intention is for students to follow a bell schedule and have class sessions that take place on a regular interval. That may look different in format. Sometimes it may be a virtual meeting, such as the one that we're hosting tonight, perhaps one with video conferencing so that students are seen, of course, and can interact that way. It could also be content that's just received. So it could be something that's broadcast out. It could also be activities that are defined with an introductory set of comments, and here's what I need you to do today. So it really depends on the type of learning that's going to occur. And when we think about the type of learning that occurs in a classroom on a given day, it's a wide variety of things that traditionally happen here at Algonquin. Teachers may come in and just spend the first minute or two giving kids some basic reminder directions about something they were working on last class. They need to just pick up and keep going. And that might be the case for this kind of a model as well.
Now with and you've already partially answered this, but let's say that a student is in the virtual model, but they're sick. Do they have to call in sick, or do you still have sick days when you're on the virtual model?
Yeah. It's a great question, right? Because if a student is available for learning, isn't that a wonderful benefit of this new system that we have in front of us, right? It's also the same thing for a snow day, right? Like we haven't officially decided about this topic, but it's a great question and it's out there in the real world. Do we even need snow days anymore? If we can do this all online sometimes, what's the matter with that? So I don't know if I can answer that one again 100% fully for you here now at this very moment on August 11th, but it's a great point. And I think that it's one of the benefits that we could possibly face and experience with this model.
Now, would so let's and this is a big question too, one that we can't fully answer, but we can ruminate on for a moment, I suppose. If the governor requests or demands or however shuts down schools and we go remote. So in the remote model, everyone is at home learning remotely and there is no longer a choice to do it in the buildings. Are we going to try to make those transitions back and forth between being remote, coming back, and students still remaining virtual, students coming back to the hybrid? Are we going to, how are we going to try to handle that?
So Dr. Rhodes asking this question because he knows it's the thing we're working on tomorrow. It's literally on the
It's
calendar.
preview. I need a preview
For us to address what this answer is going to be. It's a great question. And we want to provide that seamless transition between one environment and the next. And that's important. We know that from our previous experience in the spring. And we want to ensure that for kids. So we need to look at the calendar. And that's why he was working on that project today. He's finishing up the calendar so that we can go and take a look at it so that at random points throughout the school year, if there was to be a school closure, how could we very easily transition to that emergency plan that we somewhat described, but that has a structure to it? Let's just spend 1 minute on that topic too. That this plan that we have in the desk drawer ready to go, should we need to do that, is one that will provide a structure, much more so than we experience in the spring, that has a set time for beginning and end of the student day, that provides instruction on a daily basis for our classes to be able to meet. So that over the course of 2 days, you'll experience all of those different classes that we have in mind that you take here in the building on a period schedule type of a basis, continue to have some access period time, as well as a chance for some extracurricular online opportunities too. So we've really designed that system and we're very proud of what that work can look like should we need to use it. But again, we're really hoping that we can have a successful school year without the need for an emergency closure this year.
And just a few more here, some very quick ones. So very quickly, just a reminder. So how is PE going to work?
Great question too. PE is going to start in our morning meeting classroom location for attendance purposes. So students will meet with their PE teacher in their morning meeting room. There, the PE teacher will provide some instruction on occasion. Sometimes they'll have the kids complete their PE learning log, which they began in the spring, and is something we're going to continue this year because we know that all physical activity doesn't just take place in PE class, nor can it or should it, and we have it on a limited basis like we will this year. But then there will be other times where they'll do low aerobic, so low exhaustion of oxygen or carbon dioxide, so that we can ensure that kids are physically spaced out too. So outdoor education for PE is an opportunity. Lifelong fitness will be the focus. And our coaches are ready, willing, and able to provide kids with great experiences so they can learn some lifelong skills that are socially distanced too.
So can you speak quickly about, class sizes in the hybrid model? 6, 7, 8, we know that 8 is our largest cohort. What will they kind of look like in the hybrid model?
Great question too. So in the hybrid model, if what typically would be a class size of 24 will be a class size of 12 if we were to have full attendance. We also know that some families will choose the remote option. So in that case, then we'll have an even smaller class size. When we ran the numbers, on average, classes will be about that 10 to 12 in size. There are a couple of classes that will have 16 in them, and that's just the natural way that things kind of fall with the alphabetical breakdown. And quite honestly, at the middle school, we've had large classes in the past. So there could be a time last year where your child had a class that had a group of 30 students in it. That happens. If that's the case and the alphabetical split's even, it's 15. Well, we know that there's 1 or 2 kids that may not fit in the alphabetical breakdown. We've worked incredibly hard looking at all 467 sections that we run here in the building on a daily basis. And we're trying to even those out. And that's been the hard work that Mrs. Orecki's been doing for us. And she's done a phenomenal job. I mean, she's really been putting in the hours, trying to help us make sure that our schedule is ready to go for September.
So we need to start wrapping things up here. And I want to thank Mr. Bubniak. I want to thank Dr. Harrelson. I want to thank Principal Messia for being available to answer questions. And I want to just remind that some of these questions were chosen strategically in the sense that some of the information regarding the district-wide procedural elements, such as screening, temperatures, and procedures for what happens if a student does present with a fever or other COVID symptoms, how we would handle all of that. These are all things that are being developed not only for each of the buildings, but under the guidance of district-wide systems. So I encourage you again, check out the recording of the Q&A that Dr. Franchini did. Make sure you sign up for the next one. For those of you who may not have been completely satisfied with answers regarding your 6th, 7th, or 8th graders, please reach out to us, reach out to Principal Messier, myself, to Dr. Harrelson, to Mr. Bubniak, and we will absolutely try to answer your questions and address your concerns. Anything else?
I just want to take this opportunity to say thank you for tuning in and watching this webinar, this series here. We are very fortunate to work in an outstanding school community, such as the Averill Park Central School District and Algonquin in particular. It's going to be a great year, and I want you all to know that. This is going to be a fun year for our students. We're going to get in, we're going to get used to the new normal, we're going to get used to school, and we're going to have a great time. We're going to learn a lot, and we're going to have each other, and that's all that matters. So thank you for tuning in, and if there's anything that we can do to help you or your child in the coming weeks, we encourage you, please reach out. That's what we're here for. Dr. Rode and I are here every day, and we're glad to do that to assist you with any questions that you have. So please don't hesitate to reach out. We are busy, and we've had a number of people reach out, and that's a great thing. So it may take us more than a day. That like we typically try to respond pretty quickly. It may take us more than a day to get back to you, but we certainly want to be in touch with you.
Okay, so we're going to end this session so that we don't, especially for those of you who might need to get to the high school session, that people have a chance to take a 2-minute breather and tune in at 7 o'clock for the high school Q&A. Thank you again to all the participants. Thank you to all of you who viewed us virtually. And thanks again for just being great partners in this process with us. We appreciate you all. All right, take care. Have a
Have a good
safe
night.
night. Good night, everybody.